So welcome everyone to another edition of Sales Conversations with Sales Experts. I'm absolutely delighted. I've got a man in front of me who is a sales guru. He's a guru, is a guru, legend, expert, whatever. I'm going to call you all three of them, Nick. So you've got that sales knowledge for over a number of years working in sales. Look, it's great to have Nick Hughes from Dynamic Sales Coach on the Sales Conversations with Sales Experts with me. Nick, thank you for joining me.
Thanks very much for having me, James. Glad I could make it today. So yeah, thanks very much for the invite.
Oh, no worries at all. And I've got to start the question because your accent is it red or blue in the football sense, or is that a wrong question to start with an interview like this?
No, it's definitely a blue. I always have this conversation. If people need to ask, because they're the wrong colour, but no, definitely the blue side of the city. I can't bring myself to say the L word.
And I tell you what, actually, you guys are in. If anyone, we're not going to talk about football all the time. But you guys are in some good. I'm liking what Everton are doing at the moment, which is good. So look, Nick, it's brilliant to have a chance to chat to you. And the whole thing about Sales Conversations, Sales Experts, is about sharing your knowledge and how you've built your career in sales and what you do now. Just those that sort of don't know, just give a bit of a potted history of sort of some of the stuff you've done in your career and how you how did you get into sales? What's the element of getting into sales?
Oh, really, 16, 17, needed the job, Saturday job, back in Liverpool. Currys were opening up the electrical store, went to work for them for a Saturday, and fell in love with the whole process, the whole sales process. You sell something, somebody gives you a bit of commission, and the next one rolls on. So that's where it all started out for me. That was 25, nearly 30 years ago.
Was it?
So, yeah, so started off there and worked through their management schemes, worked across a couple of their different brands, ended up running quite a few of the stores and regions. So that was my introduction into sales some 30 years ago now.
So you made your way up from literally from like, if you like, one of the sort of early 16-year-old jobs, as it were, when you start there into a management position. That's amazing. And did they give you good training when you started as well? What was the sort of sales training they gave you?
Yeah, really, really good. And I have to say, I nearly got the sack for not turning up for the sales training. You just jogged my memory. So sales training, and this was a commitment. It was a brand new store. Used to open at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, but you had to be in the store at 7:30 for an hour's worth of training that you didn't get paid for. And when you're on £1.97 an hour, back in the early 90s, it was probably late 80s, early 90s. Sorry, it wasn't a lot. It was an awful lot of money. So every Saturday morning, come rain or shine, there for 7:30. Slept in a couple of times and then got the sack, but that's a different story. But learned so much around the sales process and how they train people initially. So yeah, there's one thing which sticks in my mind, and it still sticks with me now 30 odd years later, which was a little mantra they drummed into their salespeople about the 6 major generals.
Okay.
How's it go? So I have 6 major generals I will use every day. Who, which, have, features, spend, and pay. And it's taken me all the way through my career. And sometime, I'd say every couple of years, that comes out either with a team I've had and we've been working with them on a bit of coaching or a bit of support, or even with what I do today. There's still elements where that comes out with the right sort of questions. It starts to drive. So yeah, ended up on their management training scheme, running superstores at 21, 22 years of age. What turnover they be? 8 to 10 million pound turnovers.
Wow.
In the early 20s. So real fast learning curve, very fast learning curve. But they gave you the opportunity. They were expanding at such a rate that they needed to give that confidence and trust to some of the younger guys, and I was one of the lucky ones.
Fantastic. And I always ask this question when, with people like yourselves that have been in sales. Do you remember that first sale? Can you still remember back to that first sale? Or is it, you probably sold quite a few of them, I imagine, because you got the success you did. Can you remember the first one?
Yeah, no, I can. Because I started probably about this time in the year, literally about a month before Christmas. And the store was due to open about a week, 10 days before Christmas. And I remember I was given to look after, do you remember Walkmans?
Yes, yeah, I had one, the Sony Walkman.
Yeah, that 2-meter section of audio was mine for the very first Saturday when it opened. I had great product knowledge. I thought I knew about sales, but the first sale was a 1999 Matsui personal stereo on the yeah, I do remember. Yeah, I do. Couldn't tell what the model number was, but yeah. I think I even managed to sell them a pack of batteries as well, whereas everyone else was giving them away.
Upsell, the upsell. We'll talk about upsell in a bit. I like that
Yeah.
actually. So that grounding you had in Curry's, and did that, because I always say I had a grounding in sales from a market stall where I was on, and it helped me to. Did it help shape you and drive the sales career that you had? Do you think was that really instrumental in how you achieve your success?
Yeah, on two fronts. In some ways, it gave me, over the course of a couple of years, a great grounding in retail, really knew it inside out. The phone would ring almost on a weekly, bi-weekly basis of somebody somewhere trying to pull me in to a different business. But I also quickly realized, probably by the time I got to 23, 24, probably 24-ish, that actually retail was changing, and it wasn't about the sales process anymore. It was becoming more and more driven about just shift the box, shift the box, shift the box. So that ability to add value, to sell on a benefit as opposed to just being the cheapest in the marketplace. This was the time when the internet was just starting to get going. So certainly pre Amazon. I think Amazon probably had another couple of years of being a bookseller before it came online. But we were still starting to do stuff online, and it was starting to lose its interest for me personally. But actually, that grounding then allowed me to move into what I class as the other side of the counter, which is key account management and being out on the road, being a salesman, which was a completely different experience. And I remember my very first interview with a guy who gave me my first job on the road, and he said, I think your biggest challenge will be making that step from being behind a counter and doing 40,000 miles a year in the car and doing 6 calls a day. And the miles wasn't a problem, but that organizational skill of being in the right place at the right time, with the right message, with the right product, 6 times a day. Yeah, it took me a year or two to get that right.
But it's funny you think, because we've done different. I did a sales job similar to that in an IT. So when we do those type of jobs, it's like, people talk about sales. It's the grounding you need, isn't it? It's the knocking on, knocking on doors that when people tell you to bugger off or whatever else. It's that element that grounds us, I guess. But and had so you obviously moved from Curry's into more sort of corporate environments. That grounding that you went through and that I've been through. Do you think sometimes it's what some of the businesses that we work with lack? They haven't had to do that sort of sales grunt, for want of a better phrase. Is that a fair way?
I know, I wholeheartedly agree with you. It's a learning curve, and if I go back to the early days, there was a Curry's, a Comet, and a Clydesdale, all selling exactly the same product by the same manufacturer next to each other. What was the difference? And the difference was generally the salesperson. The prices were all the same nationally. So you over a period of time, you start to learn and develop the skill of being able to sell yourself and creating that empathy with the clients or the customers, as it were, and you start to build up that rapport very quickly within a matter of 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. So you think about the people say, well, people either like you or don't like you within that first 10 seconds of meeting you, and that approach can be very, very challenging, particularly in the centre of Liverpool where it was. So timing it right, understanding who you're speaking to, maybe making a couple of assumptions, which I wouldn't necessarily agree with these days, about questioning more. So yeah, it was a very, very good grounding. You fast forward that into when you're knocking onto a door, like you were saying, James, around the IT-based world and some of the stuff that we've done. You do have to go cold calling sometimes, and it builds that inner core of that little bit of self-belief that, yeah, it doesn't matter what's on the other side of the door. If I get the knockback, I can come back and I can do it again. You come back, you review, you go, what did I do wrong? What did I not get right? What did I misunderstand? What did I not present right? But yeah, it's that ability to review, reflect, and go, need to change something here quite quickly.
And we'll talk about some other elements of time, as both of us work in different types of audiences. But it's that issue of rejection. I don't know if you find it more, but it's as if people get really worried about it, right? I don't know if you see it a lot with the clients you work with, but people get really upset about it. They can't take it. It's as if they feel like and yet, from the sales you do, you'd probably be more used to, a success was better, that you had more of the successes and more of the rejections than the successes, right? It was just the nature of the game.
Yeah, I think it probably took me a number of years to realize this. I'm probably been in the game for 5 or 10 years at this stage, that we always used to teach people to sell on relationships and to build, and you do build that relationship. And I would never say that takes away. You have to have some sort of basis to be talking to a customer, a client, a supplier, or whatever it is. But one thing that starts to dawn on me was that relationship eventually gets abused by someone, either in that short period, the customer saying, I want a discount, or I'm not buying it. So they're abusing that short-term relationship. Or in more strategic relationships where it might be a key account person dealing with a corporate or with a medium-sized business where they've been going in for a period of time. The relationship is built just on, or the commercial relationship is built on a relationship. It's not built on sound commerciality of, I have something to sell and I bring value to your business, and vice versa. You provide value to me by giving me an outlet to sell to you, and you do whatever you use it or you sell it on, or whatever it is, depends distribution model or not. So it's an interesting format that I did took a while to get my head around, and probably made many mistakes and learned from those mistakes. They're actually in some of what I do now, I use psychometric testing, and people will tell you that, you know, that some people believe in it, some people don't. But actually, I was always a relationship salesperson in my very early stages. Got my fingers burned. You come back, you step, you reflect, you go, okay, what needs to change? And actually start to change that commerciality and become more commercial about your approach to things.
It's some great points you mentioned there, and about sort of like you say, you build and learn over time. I mean, just to move into sort of a different area, one of the reasons why I was really excited to get you onto the channel and talk about this is because you have built a career of making big sale wins, right? Because we talked before, and some of the sales deals that you've closed are some big eye-watering numbers, and people, especially when you're businesses and you're working with other people, they love, you know, the idea of winning those big numbers really excites people, doesn't it? Because they look at the commission and the opportunity. But talk to me, talk us through some of the things that you learn in having to win those sort of big deals, and what advice do you give to people that are trying to quote for larger projects now? What are some of the sort of the things they've got to get in place to be successful?
Prepare, and prepare again, and into the nth degree of what is this client actually looking for? Because the first conversation people come back to is, can you give me a price? Well, actually, what is it you need first before we talk about the price and understand that client? So some of the preparation for these bigger deals would go on literally, not in isolation, as a team of maybe 2 or 3 people, could go on for a couple of months before we'd even approach the client. So actually, or the customer in the bigger cases, going to the customer with a full evaluation of what their business was. Now, okay, some of these deals were pretty big, and you can justify having 2 or 3 people working on the project off and on for a month or so. Scale that back into an SME model where some of these may be £1 million, £2 million turnover, and they've got just themselves and maybe a small team of people. Doing that preparation helps you understand where the client has come from and where you're going to add that value to the client. Where you can demonstrate you're creating that value, the conversation around the price, it's always going to be there, just becomes that ever so little more important to the client, if you can demonstrate you understand their business. And in 2 or 3 of the really large deals that we landed or led teams to land, it was about the detail that we knew about the client, their market, their customer, and what their customer actually wanted. And in some cases, we actually went out and surveyed the client's customer, the target's customer, to understand what their market really wanted, and then presented the data back to the client. And in one case, my boss went ballistic. I spent £30,000 on a market survey, surveying 300 end users, just short of 300 end users. The size of the prize at the back of that was a £5 million order every year. So it paled into insignificance. But to sit there with the client, or the potential client, which took 6 months to get the appointment, or 6 months of knocking on the door to say, we can tell you something about your market and what your clients or what your end users are saying that you don't know. It opened the doors, but didn't just open the doors to the buyer. It gave the buyer to go back to his boss and the MD to say, someone's here telling us they know something about our business we don't know. We need to listen to them. And actually, back to that key account management thing, it then opens up the gatekeeper is normally the buyer. All of a sudden, there's a relationship then with the buyer's boss and the MD, because you're bringing value into their business.
It's such a good point you make there, and there's a video I did on the YouTube channel, which I put a link into, which is around the best salespeople educate and create value for their audience. They're able to, and there's a number of studies that show that people are, buyers don't not want to buy; they just want the salesperson to be able to understand them, like you said, to understand their marketplace, where their customers are going, where their future is going, and then to talk about giving value and to educate. And that, I mean, that those things haven't changed even now, right? If you want to get engagement with someone, if you can get to really understand what's going on in their world and then give them some insights that makes them go, oh, that's helpful, you're going to be seen as a positive salesperson that they want to bring in.
Yeah, and in relation to the competition, all of a sudden, you're the informative one. It's not costing the buyer anything. So why do I want to speak to company B when they don't bring me anything? They just bring me a product at a price. This guy, he's making me look good in front of my boss and my MD. So there's that whole added value and that effect, and it served me well. It's a tactic that I picked up from an old boss of mine about 15 years ago. But actually it served me well in 2 or 3 different scenarios where we've actually educated our target clients to what their clients and their end users of their product are actually looking for. It's a really, they can't argue with it unless they've got £30,000 and they've done a similar survey, which most businesses don't involve or don't invest in that these days.
It's a really good point, and I think it's like you say, it's about one of the biggest mistakes that I see, and a lot of salespeople make. I work with mainly, our audience is slightly different. I work with more small businesses, and you work more with corporate teams. But is that they go in with this attitude of, I'm just going to tell you how great I am, and by the way, why you should buy my product or service, rather than going in with this element of adding value in the process. I have this thing of, I use this phrase called show sales value before sales vanity.
Yeah.
And if you can give someone something, like you say, that makes them think he's helpful, she's helpful, I really like what she's got to offer there. Actually, it's great. The other thing which is you mentioned was really important is so I always say to people buy selfishly, right? So your purchasing manager, great point you made there, was able to go to their boss and say, look what this guy's bringing in. Now that's made them look good in front of the MD, right?
Yeah. So they're bought into it, and then when that buyer moves to another company or moves somewhere else in their career, I need to speak to that guy over there because he did a good job for us last time at the previous business. So it does come full circle, and that's in a formal buyer position. But I always talk regularly about who's the chief salesperson in a business, and if the MD or the owner can't articulate why that business exists and what it does, and I don't mean tell people that they sell a mouse, why do you sell a mouse? Why is that important to you, and how does that affect the wider economics of the business? If you can't articulate why that business exists, how can you then sell that to your clients as well? So yeah, it's an interesting concept that I picked up about 15 years ago, about really understanding why that business exists. And if somebody can understand it, as you say, from a sales perspective, you're going to carry much more weight than the person who's going in just with a box and saying, here's a box this month, how many do you want to buy? Or do you want to buy my service this month?
You're right. It's always about, the great salespeople and again, the people I talk to, it's about picking beneath the surface, right? Because ultimately in that, even with your first sale with the guy or the lady that came in and bought the Hitachi stereo, right? There's a reason why they've come into the store to buy that, whether it's to give it as a gift, whether it was to put a tape on or to impress their friends or whatever. There was a reason, right? And our job as salespeople is to unpick that reason and get beneath the surface. And prospects won't, and customers won't tell us it straight away. We've got to build that rapport to get underneath the surface. But when you do that, good things happen.
Interestingly, I was in Currys or PC Wales about this time last year buying a new printer in Oxford. Went in, couldn't get anyone to speak. It wasn't particularly busy. It was about 5 o'clock at night. Nobody really wants to engage with me. When I did get someone to engage with me, they didn't really know the product, couldn't really tell me why I should buy the product versus that product over here or this one there. And in the end, I went, well, do you know what? I'll just go and buy it off the internet. Because you didn't engage me, you didn't tell me why I should be here spending my money with you. And interesting, I still know quite a few people who work for the Dixon Stores Group now, back up in Merseyside. And I happened to be speaking to them at Christmas, and I told them, I said, how much has it changed? And they said, beyond belief. It is just order taking these days. There's no discussion with the client. It's about just how many people can we serve per hour. And it changed a good 15 years ago, I understand, and changed their model. I'm not here to talk about their model, but it's about that engagement. And again, it sort of reinforced something for me. And it was around the same time that Mothercare went into receivership administration, and the people were complaining. There was a general comment in the media around, well, it's got to do with online of this, online of the other, online of the other. No. You're not training your people or spending time with your people to understand how to engage with customers. And I'm not talking about high pressure sales tactics. That's not me and it's not you. It's about how do you engage in a conversation about somebody who has a need, and you've got the ability to fill that need. And we can't even do that in this country at the moment. And I find it quite disparaging, really. Quite disparaging.
I think you're so right, and I have this conversation a lot with people that say, "Oh, bloody Amazon, they've killed the marketplace and wherever else." And I said, I fight back regularly, and I say Jeff Bezos is the world's, whether he's the second richest or first or whatever, because he has this ethos, right? Start from the customer and work backwards. Okay, what are they looking for? What are they wanting? And you're right. I mean, my wife used to work in Monsoon, and she'd hear some of my ramblings, and she'd then, and this is before, unfortunately, Monsoon in June, she was a casualty of that, economic time. But when people came into the shop, the natural reaction for some of the team members there who just wanted a job was to just sort of say, can I help you?
Mm.
Whereas that my wife would start to have conversations around, oh, great to hear today. Yeah, how, what have you popped in for? Anything in particular that you're looking for, or what's brought you into our shop today, or how's your week been? Have you got any nice plans? Or just build that rapport, build that engagement, and then someone would say, oh, well, I'm going to a wedding. Oh, fantastic. Where's the wedding? Oh, the wedding's in so and so. Oh, amazing. Oh, I bet it's going to be exciting, and blah blah blah. And before you knew it, she'd get the sale of this 200 quid dress because the lady felt connected. It's the same thing, right?
And it's the same with, as humans, we all want to be liked and loved. And you asked the question about 10 minutes ago. I didn't quite answer it as fully as I wanted to. I think there's a fear in most people want to be liked, and sales want to be liked. And it's that fear of rejection. If you can get over that, that's the successful people who can get over that. And for me, they fall into two categories. Excuse me, itchy nose. They fall into two categories. The bullshit ones who can just talk over everybody and just sell. The kind of person that you avoid the next time you go into that shop. And then there's the person you usually talk about your wife, and people might think we've set this up to talk about your wife. It's just coincidental you've mentioned it.
She hasn't got a job anymore, so she might be. If you know anyone in retail that wants to employ, no, I'm joking. She don't want that job anymore. But
she sounds like she falls into the category that I prefer, which is give me a bit of engagement, show some interest in me, ask me a couple of key questions about why I'm looking for a dress or whatever. I'll share some information. If I like the colour and it looks like we can get a positive conversation, I'm happy, and away I go. And I think generally we've lost that ability in the UK, certainly in the UK market. It's interesting when I go to America on holiday or on business, and it is different. It's a different way of selling as well, but it's all about that initial engagement with the customer, understanding who they are, why you're here. You're on holiday. Oh, you're dressed in your shorts and t-shirt. Of course I'm on holiday, but you in the process, they're all automatically thinking, as your wife is thinking, so they're going to a wedding. I know they're going to a wedding. I know where they're going. So is it hot or cold? So it's probably hot. Does a woman really want to wear trousers in hot weather? Maybe not. So straight away, she's probably thinking, well, I know all the skirts are over there. Have you had a look at our skirts over here? Oh, that lady knows where everything is in the store, and she presents the options to the person.
And like you said at the start, though, the upsell bit when you were selling the batteries for the stereo, she's then selling the hat and the shoes and the other things that go along with it. Now, obviously, doesn't always get that, but the point being, that dress looks amazing. And by the way, have you thought about these shoes with it? Actually, they could work. And suddenly you've got this additional thing that on top of it, which adds to it, and that's where the real value for those companies can be. But alas, that isn't existing anymore. But I want to take you back to a bit. You talked about an old boss. Who's been your sales inspirations? Who's been the people that you've looked up to over your career that have inspired you, that have made you, that you've sort of learned, some really great sort of sales stories or wisdom from?
There's one guy that really sticks out. I won't name his name because he's actually a competitor of a customer of mine now.
Okay.
He's European sales director for business. but if he was watching this, he would recognize it, that it was him I was talking about. And he probably took someone who was pretty confident, had a good idea what he was doing, been reasonably successful, and took me into a business, into a 50 billion euro dollar business, so a huge monster of a business, into one of the divisions. And within a couple of days, really, he sat me down for by the end of the first week and went, like, these are the observations I want to see of how you're coming across, how you're working with the sales team, how we like to work, and how I work. And he gave me 3 different distinct areas: how he works, how the business works, and how I'm working. And we spent many a time, I used to work away with this particular business, and we'd sit in the office until 8 o'clock on a Monday night, and we wouldn't start our meeting until 5:30, and we'd work on coaching me. I'd give him some coaching feedback as well from a different perspective, that how he might come across in relation to the rest of the team. But those out of hours coaching sessions, as I would put it, and we both stayed away, so it usually involved a meal as well, somewhere along that, were probably invaluable. And probably, if you were to speak to my wife, she'd say that was the one person in your life, in your career, that you come home out on a Thursday and go, I've had a great week, and this is what I learned this week.
And you mentioned about coaching, and it's a really important thing, because one of the things that I'm interested to know your view, because you work with a lot of bigger companies now. Do you think sales managers do enough sales coaching of the team members that they've got? Because it feels to me like they don't.
No, I've just written a piece for a magazine about a week ago, only a short piece referring to the in-field coach, as I call it, the sales coach, the field sales coach. So that person who goes out to a client with the salesperson, doesn't say anything, just sits there, lets them control the conversation, and at the end doesn't really get involved with the conversation, but post it. They sit in the car afterwards, or they sit on the phone and they say, what do you think went well? What do you think we could do better? Well, I observed this and I observed the other, but actually I think if you try this or try the other, we might get that one next time. So that instant observational feedback almost immediately post the call, whether it's these days on Zoom, or whether it's face to face. Interestingly, someone was pitching to me on, I hate the word pitch, by the way. It was Tuesday. Managing director, business development director. I had a conversation with the business development director that I'd have a hazard a guess, probably about £6-7 million business at the moment. They're trying to supply something to me on behalf of somebody else. Business development director, spoke to him Friday, 2-minute conversation, set the meeting up for Monday. And for an hour and 5 minutes, the MD spoke. And I actually joked in the end, I actually said, is he going to speak? And it became a bit of a laugh and a joke that actually the sales guy who's responsible for the business development didn't speak. And if I was that MD, I would be looking and going, I need to shut up and let the guy get on with it. Because how can I coach him? How can I make him be better? Otherwise, there's no point in me employing him.
Yeah, because you might as well do it every time. You might as well just create a clone of you and do it.
Yeah. But I see that was an extreme example that just this week, this Monday. But I see that on a daily basis, and have seen it for 10 years. A lot of people who say, I'm a sales manager, and then you see how they operate in a day-to-day, and you go, there's no point in you having a sales person with you. You must well just go in and sell it yourself, whether it's a distribution call, whether it's services, or whatever it is, manufacturing. So yeah, I don't think sales managers, I think it's a title people have aspired to, probably because it comes with a bigger car. Invariably, in my book, there's a couple of things. And when I take a client on, I always ask about who manages the sales teams, and the sales manager very often comes from within the sales team. Top salesperson gets promoted to the sales manager. And as I always say, you're the managing director, are you the best salesperson in the company? No, I'm not. Well, if we're only promoting what we believe is the best person to do the job, why have you not promoted this person on to be the MD and you're not from a sales background? So they also very often bring inherent traits and behaviors from the existing team as well, which is always interesting to work out. And actually I see a team default to the sales manager to let them do the work, but they're happy to take the commission. So I think, as a general rule of thumb, I know there's some really good guys out there, and people who do a really, really sterling job. But very often when businesses talk to me or I get involved with businesses, usually the root cause of the problem is somewhere in that sales management leadership side of the business.
It's so important, and it's a challenge. I mean, I see it a lot in small businesses that say to me, "Oh, I'm going to bring someone into sales," and they say, "Oh, okay, I'm going to get someone into sales," and then they go, and I say, "Okay, cool. So it's all very well." And by the way, I always call it the 10K experiment, right? Because most people in small businesses, they bring someone on, they want to have the salary, let's say 20 to 30K, but the overall cost for 3 months, because they're going to give them 3 months anyway, because they're not going to fire someone straight away. It's a 10K experiment. I say tomorrow, how and what are you doing to mentor that person, and who's listening to their calls, and but talk to me about how you review the proposals they send or the calls they've had. Oh no, well, what do you mean? Like, you've invested this 10K, don't you need to do that? No, it'll be fine. Okay, fair enough. And then you just wait for the fact that you go and speak to them 6 months later. Oh no, so and so didn't work out.
Yeah.
I wonder why. Yeah. It's not rocket science.
I've got there's a friend of mine owns a creative agency, two guys, and again we've joked about this, and this again has happened over the summer. Got a phone call in the summer with him. I'll take on a salesperson. Okay, business development person, great. Can you help us write the job spec? Yeah, I'll do us a favour, help them out. Who's going to manage this person? Well, we are. One of us is going to do it. Well, you're two creative types, so you have a different mindset to a commercial person. It'll end in tears if you don't get the wrong person, the right person. They've got the right person, but that I think they almost went through that storming, norming, and forming process in the space of the first 2 weeks. And I think the person was ready to leave after 24 hours. They were ready to sack them after 48 hours. And I got a phone call to the end of the first week, which went, you said this wasn't going to work. Well, we've got a bit of a problem. Can you help us out quickly? And over the course of a couple of hours, you're like, okay, let's just sit down and have a look at how you're going about this. And there's an expectation in the creative industry. You sit down at your computer, you do something, and it's done. It's ready in 5 minutes. The sales industry can take a little bit longer. And the person's been in place now for about 3 months. Last time I checked in was about 3 weeks ago. They were doing okay. Created their own pipeline, which they were starting to make inroads into. So, yeah, it was starting to progress. But yeah, we have to sometimes remember that I won't say personalities, but certain behaviours and traits don't get on together, and it's how you've got to be prepared for that and how you manage that internally as well and externally.
Yeah, no, it's so true, and it's one of those unfortunately, and it just you can read it. I mean, well, it sounds awful to say it, but we as sales sort of veterans, we look at it and you can just predict it, can't you? You can just see it; it's just going to happen, and you think that's why I call it the 10K experiment. It's like, feel free. I mean, I'd rather experiment 10K on a holiday in Florida or whatever else. At least that's a better experiment, right? Because at least I'm going to might get sometime at the end of it. But talk to me. You obviously work with a lot of salespeople and coach people and work people. What are some of the main mistakes you think that salespeople are making nowadays? What are some or sort of top 2 or 3 mistakes that you see, either the people you've worked with in your previous careers or before you started, your business now, and then people you're saying now? What are some of the main mistakes that people are making? What are your sort of thoughts on that?
I think there's a reoccurring theme with salespeople, and it's I think it's a bit of complacency. But what I see on a really regular basis, and I've always seen it, and it's something I try and knock out to my own teams is, you get to a position, the client says yes, I'll take it, and you go, great, okay, we've got to do some paperwork, and we'll be back to you. Whatever it is, whether it's product manufacturing or professional services. And everyone gets up and leaves. And you go, oh, hang on a minute, right, sit down. What's the next steps? Can we just agree what the next steps are and what we think they're going to be? And then let's get that back to the client within same day, next day at the latest. So if there is any misunderstanding, and I see lots of misunderstanding, and I have seen it in probably every business I've worked in, because you step outside, you come back to that field sales coaching role, you sit down in the car, a coffee at Costa, and you say, how do you think that went? Fantastic, signed on a dotted line, £500,000 orders out, £5,000 orders out by Friday. It's going to happen. The client didn't say that. He said yes, but they never said yes to when, the terms, how it's going to be paid, how it's going to be administrated, how it's going to be delivered. And you see lots of things either left on the table or not enough detail in for people to walk away and go, yeah, I'm confident that's going to happen. And I see it today. I've got a client who has a commercial director, and everything's rosy. It's all going to happen this month. And you go, okay, let's talk about the pipeline. and the pipeline might sit at, let's just say, £100,000. It's been £100,000 last month and the month before, and we've only delivered 20 grand. So let's assume 80% of it is either not going to happen or it's fictitious. And you go out with the calls with some of these people and you listen to some of the conversations, and it's that same old problem. The client said yes. They did say yes, but we never nailed down when, how, what else do we need to do, who else needs to be involved in the decision making, because very often the buyer's saying yes, but there's another decision maker that hasn't been identified that needs to be in there. So it's rolling the conversation back with the sales team to say, okay, next time we go to a call like that, we need to be asking the question, who else needs to be involved to make that decision there and then, and what actions do you need out of it for us to deliver this week, this month, this quarter? And I see that right across pretty much every sector. The reverse to that is the high pressure salesperson who is, yeah, well, sign on the dotted line, the contract's ready, you know, it's there, just sign away, get on with it. For me, there's a definitive difference and a bit in the middle, and the bit in the middle for me is much more professional. Come back, I'll reconfirm everything we've configured, we've discussed. And in many cases, the good salesperson will have most of those things in their head anyway, that they knew they weren't going to get the actual purchase order at that moment in time. And the conversation's already in their head, and all they do is go home, tap it out, and it's with the client before end of business that day, with a follow-up call to say, right, everything's done, how do we move forward?
It's a really great point you make, and I have a model around sales is like data, and point number 11 in that model is around, you know, is about basically on board, or 10, 11, 12 are about transacting, onboarding, and then delivering happy clients. And you know, I always say to people, it's that jumping through hoops, right? You know, how do you make people jump through hoops? And going back to our Amazon thing, start from the customer and work backwards. Make it so simple for people that all they've got to do is just make easy decisions. And if you do that, it works well, doesn't it? But is it laziness? Do you think? I mean, a question here's an interesting question. So I work with a lot of small businesses, and I don't think they're lazy, but they're lazy around sales. Definitely, people are really reluctant to do sales activity. It's because they're afraid of it. They're worried about what to do. Do you think, you know, in the environments that you work with, do you think people are, I say, lazy from a sales perspective?
I won't contradict some of my own social media, but there's the odd post out there before someone throws it back at me and says you're contradicting yourself. I'll say generally, as a general review of the market, salespeople are naturally lazy people, and the people who really rise to the cream of the at the top are the people who are prepared to push themselves, look at things differently, and do things in a different manner. Hence why me and you are sat here, being there, seen it, done it, want to do our own thing to improve other businesses. But yeah, I think there's an expectation, and the expectation is, I want 30 grand, 30, 40, 50 grand a year. I want the BMW. I want the pension, and I want a bonus that matches my salary and expectations. But people are not prepared to work for it these days. Now, you have to tailor that conversation with millennials, or the mindset. And I've got a 16-year-old son as well. He's about to do his driving test next month. He's, well, of course I'll pass first time. Have you read the highway code? Well, why do I need to read that? I know what all the signs mean. What's a stopping distance of 50 miles an hour? Don't know. But we've now got an influx of employees, in my opinion, who are coming through with a need and a want it now, and well educated. But being well educated, but actually there's a sales process that you need to go through. You need to take the knocks. You need to have the pick you up moments. You need to have that Friday afternoon when you have to ring the boss and say, I promised you that deal. Well, it's not happening. And the reason why it's not happening is I misread something 3 weeks ago, and I didn't resolve for the client quick enough. And I think people need to go through that process. And I don't see businesses going through that process. As you said, it's going to cost X amount for someone to be there for 3 months. And you want to start at the end of 3 months, you want someone to start to deliver something by the time they got their feet under the table and they start to go through. And I don't think people are prepared to go through that. But I also think businesses are not prepared to invest time and wanting to give people a fair chance at times. Don't get me wrong, some great businesses out there who I've seen sit with customers, with employees and new salespeople, and you go, you're now mollycoddling them. Yeah, don't they want to go. They're almost pushing you off the desk and saying, leave me to it. Let me get on with it. Let me fail. And for me, they're the bright people. They're the people of the future who are saying, I need to learn myself here.
It's a great point, and again, I think you're right. There's some clients I've got, a couple of clients that are really committed. They, I help them interview their sales team, and I mentor them, and they commit to it, and they invest in me to go and do that, and the results are evident because the sales guys get results. But I think you're right. There's I'm a big David Goggins fan, and I love the phrase he used about the accountability mirror. And I say to people, I don't know if I was doing some recordings or videos today, and one of the things that it's a natural tendency when sales deals don't go your way, especially in small businesses and in any business. People go, oh, well, it was the prospect's fault because they had someone else come in there and do that. And, actually, it was actually their issue over there. And I always say to people, there's only one place to look when that deal fails, and that's in the mirror. And at the end of the day, the accountability mirror, and we've been it when we've lost deals and we've worked and ultimately it's because something we could have done. Who could I have brought into the conversation earlier? Who didn't I engage with as I should have done? Where didn't I ask that right question? Or how didn't I deal with that objection? Whatever it is, the mirror doesn't lie. And I think it's a real big wake-up call to a lot of salespeople, unfortunately, is the best way to learn is to look yourself in the mirror and be open and honest. And if you do that, I think more companies, and you work with a lot of corporates, most people are prepared to accept and appreciate that more than people saying, oh, no, it's not my fault, slippery shoulder.
But if you think about the clients you talked about a minute ago, and you look at that mirror and that accountability, have those businesses, not your clients, but some businesses who failed with the salesperson, or the salesperson is failing, what was the process you went through to recruit them into your business? Did they understand what the job was all about? How have you supported them in that first week, 2 weeks, month, whatever it needs to be? But business owners, I also see, and sales managers saying, yeah, they were rubbish, we just got rid of them. Hang on a minute, that's the third person you've got rid of this year who you said rubbish. So there's something fundamentally wrong with how you're recruiting people and what style of person you're going for. So that mirror of accountability can be turned around to the people in the business as well. But on an individual level, I think if you haven't got that self-awareness and that ability to go, yeah, do you know what, I didn't do well this week. I was late to every meeting, I was ill-prepared. I didn't understand the client wanted, didn't ask enough questions, enough open questions, probing questions, all the usual sales stuff we talk about. I think there's a fair chunk of salespeople that finish their week like that, but don't do that self-reflection at the end of the week. And the difference is, in 30 grand a year and £5 bonus and driving a VW Passat versus being a key account director at HP, my monitor's HP, on a 80 grand a year, driving a 5 Series BMW with a bonus that matches half your salary probably. Because they're the people that will push themselves out of the self-reflection.
And it's a great point, and I think both of us are advocates of learning and picking up from things. I think the other thing I have sales presentations and sessions that I'll do with smaller businesses, and sometimes they'll bring someone in that doesn't want to be there, and I'm a bit difficult about it. I'm like, can you either take them out or I'm going to stop? I'll walk out, because I don't want to sit in and work in and do a training session where they don't want to be here, because it's a waste of my time and their time if they don't want to be here. Learning is really difficult, right? Because a lot of people think they know it all, especially in sales. Again, but what habits? How do you, get my questions out? How do you, what sort of stuff have you been, share to your clients and the people you work with? How to build habits that help them become more effective in sales? Because part of that's just adjusting, isn't it? The world isn't what it was 15, 20 years ago, and they have to adjust and learn with it.
No, and what you just explained there, I see on a couple of times a year where there's been a salesperson of a certain age, been in the business 10, 15 years, no one can tell them anything. And you come in for your first training session, and you sit there back in their seats, arms folded, you can't teach me anything. Oh, okay, fine. And I have a very, very simple tactic of take a flip chart, turn it around so you can't see it, and I usually draw a castle with a lady with long hair and a windy road. And the castle's got windows, and we start the usual conversation about questioning. And this said salesperson is usually the person who says, "Oh, this is all a load of rubbish." Okay, well, you tell me, because they can't see what's on this board. You ask the questions, I'll answer yes or no, and they never get it, because invariably they start to guess after a couple of questions. Oh, is it a car? No, you've got to ask me. I'll tell you it's a building, and you've got to decide. You've got to almost tell me. And the real good people at it will ask lots of open questions about how old is this building, what style is it? Is it square? Is it round? Is it hexagonal? Has it got windows? Is it gated? Is there a wall outside? And in most cases, the the good questions, open questions, and the probing questions are the ones that get 80% of it right. But that sort of breaks down the barrier with that person that actually, yeah, okay. So, and I have given people a choice. You can either stay or you can go, but it's quite simple. The board, MD, sales directors brought me in. You need to go and tell them why you don't believe you need to be here.
Mm.
And it's tough, and it's a bit of tough love. And I've only had one person who's not come back, and I don't know what happened to them, to be honest, because I didn't see them again. But I was in the business for 6 months.
And this is the thing, right? Because, like, you know, it's a challenge that people have, and that's the thing about learning. I say to people all the time, I'm learning. I learn from people like you. I learn from other people I'll talk to. I'll go to events. I'll go to webinars. I'm on a hunger to learn, right? Because the moment I think I'm done from a sales perspective, put me in my box and shirt and put me away somewhere, because you know the world is. I'm learning about the fact that I've had to do more sales on Zoom, for example, because we didn't have to do as much of that last year, right? Because we didn't have a bloody COVID pandemic. So it's that want to just learn. I just think half the battle is salespeople have got that open mind. And if you can take one thing from a presentation or a call or an element that you can then think, oh, I could apply that, I could try that. It's just such a difference.
And that's the thing, isn't it? You know, somebody might sit in the training room for a couple of days over the course of a couple of weeks. But if that person, however good they are, or however good they believe they are, if they just walk away with one thing and they go, yeah, do you know what? If I did that, I could have converted that £5,000 deal, that £100,000 deal, or actually, I could have got something even bigger. It's paid for itself. But then the person has to put that into their behaviors, and it becomes habit forming and it becomes second nature, and it can take a long time. So yeah, anyone who says they've stopped learning from me in sales, I'd never say it, because you can't even go on forever. And this year's changed again. You know, as we know, we've all had to adapt. I hate using the word pivot, but we've all had to adapt to how we do things differently. And I think that will continue. We'll continue to having to change.
You're right, and it's not going to get any different anytime soon. But look, we've got nearly at the end of our session. It's been great just to talk to you about it. This is why these sessions go so quickly, because you just chat about sales stuff and it just goes. But talk to about, if I said to you some of the biggest sales mistakes you've learned, or I wouldn't say biggest mistakes, but what's the things that you learn that the people watching the channel generally tend to be smaller businesses that are running business, that are trying to grow, and they're nervous about sales. They've maybe just find it a bit of a challenge. What's some of the mistakes or things that you could tell them that say, don't do this, just don't do these elements, don't make these mistakes, because you know what, it's going to come and bite you in the arse.
Okay. Something which I think is quite relevant at the moment, and I've seen a fair bit of this in the latter half of the year, is understanding your worth and your value. Because if you don't value yourself and you don't value your business, how can you convey that to the clients? And I'm seeing quite a lot of people, like what me and you do in the consulting and the freelance world, who are working for free 2 or 3 days a week because they want to continue that relationship with the client. It's again back to that form of abuse we talked about earlier about relationships. But if you haven't got that value and understand your own value, what your worth is, the bills are not going to stop coming in. The mortgage is still going to be paid. If you employ people, you still have to employ people. But yeah, understand that real worth. And if you can find a differentiating point or a true value in what you do compared to the competition, shout about it. Shout about it every day in a nice way and in a positive way. And you'll find people will start to listen and come around. The problem is that everyone's panicking for every single sale at the moment, but it's at what cost? And I just see constantly the price doing that. Margins probably doing that at the same time, probably faster than the sales rate. And it has to stop somewhere. And I think people have to say, actually, do you know what? I'm prepared to accept slightly lower volume, but at a better margin to build from. And I think people say, well, we did X amount of millions last year, X amount of thousands of pounds, whatever it is. That might come under pressure this year, but make sure you're profitable. And the way you're going to maintain that is understand your value and sell on your value.
I think such a great point, and it's a really great thing to again to the business owners I talk to, is to know that value, to find out where it is, and people say to me, how do I find it out? And it's like, talk to your client base, talk to your prospect base, because they'll tell you what they see value in you and what they don't. And if you and that goes back to that differentiation that you talked about, that element around the back to your days in Comet or in Curry Story, when the differentiation was the salesperson, right? It's that the
Yeah.
differentiation is the value you get from that person, that or from the way that they approach things, and it's
And that's,
building that.
people think differentiation has to be something big. It can be something really small. It can actually be the way you process the invoices that the client likes,
Mm.
or you do something innovative about how you receive the orders in through an EDI system, manually, or how the girls on the phone, the boys on the phone engage with the clients. And actually, if that is the key, encourage it, do more of it, get the sales team to sit in more, listen how are the orders processed, how is the client managed. Every business has got some form of differentiator, I think, and an added value. It's whether you can identify it and then how you use the phrase lightly, exploit it.
No, it's a fair comment, and it's a fair way of, like you say, you've got to be able to be proud of who you are, and get those elements out there. But look, it's been brilliant to chat to you and look, and to hear about your stories, and so here's, I always ask these sort of funny things at the end, Nick. If you were, so if you're a superhero and you could sort of create one superhero power, what would it be, and what impact would it have on you? Would it have had on your sales career?
Um, Superpower. Um,
Everton to win the Premier League. How about that as a superpower?
no, that's never going to happen, I don't think. I would say, I know we don't want dead air. I would say the ability to rewind 15 seconds.
I like it. Come on, tell me
Yeah.
more.
There's been a few occasions where you say something and you go, I said the wrong thing here. Backtrack. So if I could pause and rewind the world for 15 seconds, I think there'd be a lot of less contentiousness. There'd be less things said. And I know I'd be in less trouble at home as well if I could rewind 15 seconds.
Brilliant, brilliant. What a brilliant way to finish. I think it's fantastic. And do you know what? I think I've heard quite a few of them, but I'm going to like that. I love the ability to rewind 15 seconds. And it just goes to show, doesn't it, that actually there's a video I have around, which I'll also put a link in, around emotional sales intelligence. And one of those elements is about self-control. Of at that moment when we're in sales, when someone says something, we want to just, and it's just about, right,
Yeah.
just pause, just, yeah, reel yourself in before you open your gob, say something you regret, and then think, oh, can't change it. So I love that one. I think that's a brilliant, really good. Look, it's absolute pleasure to have some time with you this afternoon to join. I know that this is going to be really valuable to everyone that watches it. And where can people find out about you, Nick, if they want to get to know a bit more about you and some of the stuff you do? I know you've got a blog on your website as well and lots of resources. So where
Yes.
can they find out about you?
Best place at the moment to be LinkedIn. Our website is about to be changed from 1st of December, sorry, 1st of January. So I won't give you the web address because it's been changed ever so slightly. So you find me on LinkedIn as Nick Hughes, Dynamic Sales Coach.
Fantastic. Look, it's been an absolute privilege and pleasure for me to talk to you about this stuff. It's we both have sales in the blood and we love it and we're passionate about it. But I know both of us are also really passionate about helping the businesses and companies we work with get better sales results as well, which is what we want. So look, Nick, thank you. I've taken up an hour of your time, but I have to say, Nick, I did speak to Nick a couple of weeks ago, and Nick's a man of his word, because I'll finish the session off by he was doing his interview, doing a conversation with him, and he said, I'm going to finish this bit of my office off at the weekend, and he's done it. And I have to say, look, he's looking great. So this man's a man of his word. Go and check him out. He's a real sales guru and knows his stuff. And especially if you're in a corporate sales team or watching this and thinking, I need some help to get my team on track, then Nick's the man for you. So thanks, Nick. I really appreciate your time, and it's been absolutely fantastic.
Cheers, James. Thanks very much for having me. It's been a wonderful hour. Thank you.
Brilliant. So there you have it. That was Sales Conversations with Sales Experts. Thanks very much to Nick Hughes from Dynamic Sales Coach for sharing his time, his expertise, great knowledge. Have a look at Nick. We'll put some links in the video below to share how you can connect with Nick and get some insights on him and how he's helped businesses and corporate companies sell into some larger deals. But you know, the whole idea of sales conversations, sales experts, is to give you insights. You don't want to always hear from me. As well as I've got some knowledge and passion, you want to hear from other people, and Nick's certainly a man to do that. So, by the way, look, if you're watching this and you're a sales leader and you think, hey, I could be talking to James about this stuff, reach out, drop an email through to alex@jameswhite.business or abby@jameswhite.business. The links will be below. I'd love to talk to you and share your sales knowledge and expertise with my audience as well. But I hope you've enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. If you do love these series, please like the subscribe button, share it with colleagues and friends and people you know. You know, my whole passion is on helping great small businesses get incredible sales results, and I want to help you and take your business to the levels you want it to. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and look forward to sharing another video with you really soon.